Really?
Yeah, he's my son. You know, if we're ready to go, I mean, for me, this an informal conversation. Every time I'm in Richard Wesley's presence, I'm always talking to him anyway. So you guys get ready to see, every time I see him, we live in the same town. Every time I'm in this gentleman's presence, I'm always chopping it up with him. I'm always trying to learn. As someone who came in this industry, chose to be an actor, to be in a city where you have giants like a Richard Wesley, who I didn't realize was from my hometown of Newark, who wrote Uptown Saturday Night, Let's Do It Again, movies that we could quote back and forth. And then, which I didn't find out till much later that you were my homeboy. Until I was like pretty grown. I knew about, of course, Mr. Jones, Amiri Baraka, having gone to high school with my dad, and just his legendary status of being active, a social activist and things like this. And learning that gentlemen like you were in this business and achieving things, and just as artists, to me, gave me the confidence, you know? When you find out that that's someone from your hometown doing things, gives you that little extra kind of boost to let you know that you can achieve and make it too. Back in those days, people want to talk about things were bad coming from Newark, if you remember. I mean, it's nice being in this building. It's redone over, but back in the day when it was Lowe's and Haynes, and nobody was trying to come to Newark, right? Now everybody wants to come. That's great, just as long as it works for the people that have been here for years and that are residents, born and of and raised here. And welcome to everybody that's new, but that's not just the people that have been here for years. Faces I've seen, second generation faces. The mayor of the city, which is an incredible thing, is the son of the man who inspired me, who went to high school with my father. So there's generations here. And years ago, when my mom pushed me out on stage because nobody else wanted to play Prince Charming and put on the tights at Thompson Dance Studios recital, you know, which bit the bug. And then my dad, my uncle, who are involved in activism and politics, you know, there's a lot of talking around, you know, speechifying and making so, and growing up with people, my father who knew people like Mr. Baraka and you being here later on, years their junior, it just gave me that inspiration, that confidence to do it. So every time I'm with him, it's a joy to me to speak to him. His name was an answer on tests that I took in school.
Really?
Yeah, your name, you know, I studied you and reading some of your stuff the other night. It was like being back at school, getting familiar with your works and things like that. I actually performed The Past is Past at one of the Newark Film Festivals before one of the screenings. We did kind of a stage reading of The Past is Past 150 years ago. You were also our champion.
150 years
Yeah,
ago.
not that many, right?
Yeah.
You were also our champion for Drop Squad when we brought the session, the short version of the feature film Drop Squad over here to the film festival. Rich was our champion because a couple of the brothers, and Gloria, yes, very much so. A couple of the brothers, my partners, went to Howard. Won't hold that against them as a Hampton man myself. You went to Howard as well, and you went to school with some pretty heavyweight people too.
Yes. Hattie Winston, Donnie Hathaway, Jesse Norman were all in my class.
Right.
And
Remarkable.
And the first time I directed a play at Howard, Donnie did the music for it.
That's crazy. That's remarkable. And you had the ever beautiful, I used to call her.
Sherry Winston was in my class too.
Wow.
Yeah.
I called Felicia Rashad.
Yeah, she was a freshman when I was a senior.
Princess Felicia, now Queen Felicia. Rashad
Queen,
was also in your class.
No, she was behind
I mean, she was
me.
behind you.
Yeah, she was one of the little kids.
But you
who
were at
came in
school
as
with her.
freshman.
She was underclassman. You were born here in Newark.
Yep. St. Barnabas Hospital.
St. Barnabas.
It was on Kinney Street.
July 11th.
July 11th.
That was my Uncle Buddy's birthday, July 11th, 7/11. And your father was a laborer, your mother was a housewife.
Yep.
Your father passed when you were a young man and you were the man of the house?
Right after I graduated from university. I was 22.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of stuff going on. You said in the book, between the years of 17 and 23, you talked about that was the civil rights era. There was a lot of turmoil in the country, if not the world. You talked about in your book Goodman, Cheney, Schwerner being killed during that time. Malcolm X assassinated. Martin Luther King assassinated. JFK assassinated. Who else? Robert F. Kennedy assassinated.
Robert F. Kennedy. One of the classmates from Howard, he was political ally of Stokely Carmichael. He was killed in a mysterious car bombing. He was driving, Stokely had asked him to drive a car back to D.C.
Right.
And we all think the bomb was actually meant for Stokely, but his name was Ralph Featherstone. He was an officer in the he wasn't the target, Stokely was. So, you know, that was someone personal. That was someone close to me.
Right.
One of the guys I played ball against in high school was killed in Vietnam my senior year, the year after, and I think also in my senior year, just before I graduated, I found out that one of my classmates, or former classmates, who was from Newark, who was transferring from Howard to go to Rutgers Newark campus and everything, something happened with his transfer, he got delayed, he got drafted, and the Army just needed 7 months and they killed him.
Right.
You know, so.
Before he could come back home.
Yeah.
That was really stuck with me there. Got me too. So.
Yeah, I hit that wall. Yeah. You know, I was cool with the 4 minus y equals 5 or 3 or 1 or whatever the hell. You know, excuse me. But once they started putting it in parentheses and then drew a line under it, and put a y and then the equal over here, and then you had to get the figure over here, I was like,
the typewriter was looking pretty good, huh?
Yeah, you know, I watched that D get closer and closer and closer, and that aircraft carrier get further and further away. And I was miserable, and it was my mother. She was the one. She reminded me that when I was much younger, when I was in grammar school, when I didn't have any money to buy comic books, my brother, who was very good in art, used to draw pictures, and I would write the balloons and write captions, words in the pictures, and we created our own comic books.
Your own comic books.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, and she said, you know, maybe there's something in there in that, and that's when I started thinking about, well, yeah, I like The Twilight Zone. I like Mary Tyler Moore. You know, I liked stories and shows that had well-written, really tightly written scripts, and that was what convinced me.
Well, that's apparent in your work. I mean, one of the things you. Good work lasts through time, and Richard, obviously, we all know his work speaks for itself as a brilliant writer. So that skill to bring jump in somebody's face, it's a lot different than other type of writing, and is that the type of writing that obviously you said you were doing the comic books, but that attracted you, that immediacy of theater?
Well, yeah, once I got to school, because before I got to Howard, I had never seen a play in my life. I was in school plays, but I'd never seen a professional production, ever. And even when I was in D.C., I think I was probably a sophomore or junior before we saw one of those touring professional companies coming through. So for me, drama was mostly what I saw on television. I became familiar with some of the major playwrights because there were always television productions around somewhere of the great plays. So I saw Eugene O'Neill on TV before I ever saw him on stage. I saw Arthur Miller, The Crucible, adaptation of it on television before I ever saw it on stage. And Langston Hughes, Simply Heavenly, I saw on television. But I think that was something he wrote directly for TV. But it was all those actors, seeing them on stage and everything, and knowing who Langston Hughes was at the time. That was also an extra inspiration for me.
Right.
Yeah. And I started noticing differences. I started figuring out why there were some shows or movies that worked better than others, and it always seemed to come back to the script, and how tightly connected the scenes were to each other.
Right. And you're not even an actor writing a role for himself. You know, actors, you write a role for yourself, you get a little, I didn't get it done that year, let me make the character older. So, you're not even an actor, but I think with the Mighty Gents, it seemed that worked perfectly for what you were trying to convey, right?
Yeah, because what I was really talking about was, in that play, metaphorically, at least I hoped that what people would pick up were the dangers that come from spending too much time looking behind you and not making any kind of preparation for what's ahead of you, and not being able to deal with what lies ahead. And the reason that I was writing about that at that time was because I was starting to run into a lot of my, comrades from my revolutionary days who were still in the revolution, and the revolution was over. Yeah, it was like people were, moving on, and I even remember one time that I got into a real bucket of hot water with some brothers in Harlem, because in a moment of pique, I said, "Well, didn't you hear what Nile Rodgers said? Clams on the half shell, roller skates."
So effectively, the revolution is over.
The revolution was over. They declared the revolution over. Y'all still out here.
So and I also feel that through
I wrote a play about it.
Some of the individuals, that was their heyday, right? I mean, during the revolution, that was the time when were living their life to the fullest. It's like, it kind of reminded me, and we all know individuals like this. They were at high school, college, they have certain periods of their life, and they're still living in those glory days and haven't been able to mature and move on and it kind of reminded me of some individuals are stuck like that I know too.
Yeah, well, I still have my little red book at home, and I believe it's in the little red book where Mao Zedong wrote the words, "If you do not deal with reality, reality will deal with you." And so that became like a mantra in my head. I'm a writer. Keep your eye on what's going on around you. Keep your eye on where people are. Keep your eye on whatever that strategic game plan is. Are you moving toward it? Do you have to make an adjustment? Are there adaptations, in the plan that you're going to have to confront and be prepared to address? Or are you just going to continue to go down a path this way that's leading to nowhere?
So that's leading me to your days out of college and your revolutionary Black Arts Movement, Black Power Movement days, when you joined Ed Bulletin and one of the original founders of the Black Panther Party, who was now writing. I mean, because it seemed like to me in reading some of that stuff that I was like, wow, Rich was really a revolutionary there. Which was he going to be, the playwright or the revolutionary? Were you the playwright to serve the revolutionary agenda, or was the revolutionary helping to serve the playwright agenda, or was there a merge between the two?
There was supposed to have been a merger, and I think that there was, but Ed was one of the, he was an incredible teacher. I remember, one time just thinking, Owen Dodson at Howard wanted me to go to Yale, and he was going to write a letter for me to attend Yale drama, because that was his alma mater.
Oh, well, let me just stop you right. Owen Dodson being one of your mentors at Howard, along with Ted Shine. Right? Okay.
Right. And he wanted me to go to Yale and get my master's. But after 4 years at Howard and everything, I just wanted to get out in the world, and I was kind of schooled out. And there were times where I thought to myself, maybe I should have listened to Owen. And then I remember I met Ed. And the 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, actually it was 6 years, the 6 years that I spent with Ed Bullins was like graduate school. It was a continuous 6-year master class in writing, in political writing, in political ideology, and in social evolution. Because all those things were swirling around him at that time. When I was in the workshop with him, Ed told us, and I know that this grew out of the experiences he had as the Minister of Culture in the Black Panther Party when the party was first founded. He said that a writer should always know ideology, but a writer should never be ideological. You know, and I was like, okay. You know, what does that mean?
Right.
Well, what it means is today's orthodoxy is tomorrow's heresy. It can happen that fast inside a revolution. And when you're filled with ideology, and it's ideology that's driving you and everything, when things change, when your ideology becomes suddenly becomes heresy for the organization, the first people the organization turn on are the ones who create the images. You know, so that's why a lot of times writers wind up against the wall.
Right.
So.
And that's what happened as things progressed in the revolution, and some people were a little bit more extreme, and as you wrote in the book, they weren't concerned with raising consciousness, they were concerned with raising hell.
Yep.
That you kind of said, well, maybe, you know, my path is different. You know, I could do it through raising consciousness through the form of art, writing, my plays that present this life and present the issues that plague our society with us. I mean, you chose to step away from those people that were strict ideologues, right?
I did. I avoided them.
I mean, because they was pulling out guns and stuff, some of them after.
Well, they had pulled, you know, no one ever pulled a gun on me. I think the only time anyone ever pointed a gun at me was when I was in high school, and one of my friends decided to go and show us the gun that his father had hidden in somewhere in the house, and he aimed it at me. I remember he pointed that gun straight at me like that, and it was, I forgot what caliber it is, but I could see the bullets in the chamber, you know, and I was not a happy camper.
Right.
I remember, man, what you doing, man? You know, all that,
But that's the challenge, right? I mean,
that was the only time.
You guys were making art to affect the Black Power movement, and there were differences of agreement of how extreme they wanted to get. I mean, you wrote Black Terror with the notion of what if the revolution actually jumped off, right?
So I took all of the ideology, every political theory that was in contention at that time, nationalist, Marxist, and I put it on stage. I had those revolutionaries who were, you know, revolutionary nationalists. I had those who were revolutionary Marxists. I had them working together. I had them working against each other. I had them working against the system itself. And I just put it up there, and I said, okay, I'm not going to editorialize. I am not going to take a stand. I'm just going to put everything up there exactly the way I see it, have everyone speak exactly the way I hear people speaking. I'm going to let the audience make up their mind. I'm going to let the audience decide. When people come to see this play, they're going to recognize everything that's happening. And but the difference is that instead of this being a play that was set today, it's going to be a play that's set tomorrow, when the revolution has jumped off, when the bombs have been planted, when the Molotov cocktails have been thrown, when the assassinations have been put into place. It's all going to be up there. Now what? Now let's see the revolution in action.
Right.
What Sidney was thinking, you know, but he hired me.
For Uptown Saturday
For
Night.
Uptown Saturday Night, and then when that film did well, he asked me if I would write another one, so let's do it again. And in both cases, I did not write a single joke. Every scene, I just wrote the scenes, you know, what I thought should be happening in the scene. And I thought there might be some moments where there would be levity, where some things could be potentially funny. But I also knew that if I wrote them well enough, in the sense that I gave the actors, whoever would be playing those roles, a clear idea of what was going to happen in each of those scenes, that they would find the humor. Because Sidney made it clear to me that every major part in that film was going to be played by someone who had some kind of comedic ability, except for him. He wanted to be the straight guy in it, you know.
He was good as a straight guy.
But but all the other parts were going to be played by comedians. So I just decided I would just write the scenes straight, but you know, hopefully some of the situations that were occurring in the scenes had some element of humor, and the actors themselves would bring that. So, you know, Flip Wilson playing the preacher, Richard Pryor playing the, you know,
talk about all-star cast, man. I mean, you know, these guys are already bringing that energy, right?
Yeah.
How did that jump off? I mean, you talk a little bit about running into Sidney or Bill, and they wanted you to write something for them, because Sidney Poitier was around New York, a part of the American Negro Theater that started in the early '40s. And him and Harry Belafonte came out of that. And so,
how'd they find me?
How'd they find you? And you guys come together with that.
What happened was, that sounds like one of those comedy. What happened was, I wrote a one-act play right after Black Terror, and Joe Papp did that one as well. Actually, Novella Nelson, the actress Novella Nelson, was producing a series of plays, and she included my one act in this series that she was doing. The actors who were in the play, that particular one act, were Morgan Freeman and an actress named Beverly Todd.
Wow.
Okay. Beverly Todd had worked in 2 films over the previous 4 years with Sidney. And Sidney was living in New York in those days. So when he came back from a trip, he had heard, or there was a message or something for him from Beverly saying, come on out and see me in this play. And so he came with Harry Belafonte to see Beverly Todd. And I was there that night, but he and I didn't meet.
I'm trying to imagine, you know, you're at a play and the young Sidney Poitier and Harry Belafonte that just happened to be kicking it, they come check your play out. You know,
that was,
the lineage that you end up starting to see, you know, and after years you start realizing, you know, I'm thinking about auditions back in the day. Sam Jackson and Wesley Snipes out on the street. You know, those guys are millionaires now. I'm not. But, you know, you get to be a part of the lineage. You know, I'm getting to work with the great Ozzie Davis that you kind of crossed those paths with, Miss Ruby.
Yeah.
I mean, you really appreciate that lineage of all these great black performers and writers and activists and things like that.
We have another question.
Hi. My name is Whitney. My question to you is, what is some really great advice you can give to the young future writers?
First, keep writing. Don't stop. Also, learn to be a good listener and a good observer. Try to spend as much time as you can listening to the voices that are around you. I mean, everybody tells you to listen to the voice that's inside of you. So I know you're doing that. But listen to the voices that are around you. Listen to the way people talk and the differences in the way that they talk. Listen to or observe behavior. And remember, you know, you're a writer, everything and everybody is grist for the mill.